Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Tuesdays with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. And now your host, Brian Tally.
Hello and welcome back to Tuesdays with Tally Podcast, where we add real-life value to the lives of everyday people. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Folks, today we celebrate day 116 of this brand new podcast and our 81st episode. Again, thank you for joining us and thank you for your support. We strive to add that positive reflection out there in the lives of everyday people by doing podcasts that matter, putting meaningful content out there for everybody to share and to kind of soak in to improve their lives. Again, why is it Tuesday with Tally when you're doing this stuff on Mondays? Well, the idea came to me on a Monday night, and my very first podcast was on a Tuesday. So I'm just kind of keeping the name. I thought I would do one a week, but I've become obsessed with it. So now I do it every day, but it's Tuesdays with Tally. Maybe perhaps I need to change it to Today with Tally, but we will see how that goes. Now, are you a business owner? Are you looking to advertise your business? Well, you can do it right here on Tuesdays with Tally podcast. Let me help you reach your goals, and let's put a marketing plan together and develop a strategy that will take your business to the next level. Now, I want to tell you about dreamingaboutthemouse.com. Now, this is a travel agent that is sure to make your vacation experience as seamless as possible as they take on the planning and logistics of an experience of a lifetime. We all know the planning piece is the most stressful part of any vacation. Dreaming About the Mouse Travel is a Christian-based travel agency with the heart of service that uses their years of expertise to help turn your vacation dreams into reality. Their number one goal is to take the stress out of planning for busy families and to serve them with integrity. They take care of all the details, and you get the experience of all the fun, make new memories, and share in the excitement that your vacation will offer. They have two brands that will meet all of your travel needs and much more. Dreaming About the Mouse Travel is their Disney-focused brand, and Dreaming About Vacations is their brand for all other travel destinations. Between the two brands they specialize in, they take care of all your Disney destinations, Universal, sandals and beaches, Hawaii trips, cruises, and all-inclusive resorts, and much more. Visit them online today at dreamingaboutthemouse.com and book your vacation package today. That's dreamingaboutthemouse.com, or call 719-216-2626 to book your vacation today. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us on today's program. Jennifer Bridges is a registered nurse who's originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but has called the Houston metro area home for 20 years. Jennifer was fired from her job at Houston Methodist on June 22, 2021, after 8 years of honorable service for refusing to take the COVID shot. Now, Jennifer was one of the very first nurses in America to take a stand and publicly speak out against this mandatory vaccination. In doing so, her story was quickly featured in the news media, and it went national from there. Jennifer has since initiated a class action lawsuit with 200 others against Houston Methodist. Jennifer is the founder of Guardians of Medical Choice. She strives to constantly find new ways to combat these mandates and will stop at nothing to spread the truth to the public about the risks of the COVID shot and vaccine. With that, we are honored to be joined by Jennifer Bridges. How are you? So, Jennifer, you had mentioned that you're from Cleveland, Ohio. What was life like growing up as a kid?
Oh, it was great. Cleveland is so much different than Houston, Texas. There's not as much culture there and diversity. So it's a lot simpler, but I spent most of my time outdoors. There's a huge park system up there called the Metro Parks that goes on for like thousands of acres. So I just spent most of my time running around the woods or going camping and hanging out with family and friends. So that it was nice. I miss the season change a lot because that is gorgeous. That's something that you don't see down here much, but I definitely prefer it down in the South.
Indeed, yes, the changing of the leaves is very nice to see. It's very refreshing. It's good for the heart, the mind, and the soul to witness the seasons of change. And of course, we all go through seasons as well, mentally, physically, and naturally. So it's very nice to see that, and I do appreciate it here. As I am now in Houston as well, and the leaves are changing here, and it's been cooler, so it's nice to kind of experience a lot of what the upper Midwest has to offer here.
Yeah, it does it a little bit down here. It's not quite the same, but it definitely, you experience a little bit of it down here.
Mm-hmm. I do appreciate all the trees up here and all the woods. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Oh, that's like my favorite. I love it.
So you go through high school in Cleveland, Ohio. What were your goals and perhaps your dreams when you were in high school on what you would eventually become when you graduated high school? What did that path look like for you?
Well, what's funny is I actually had no clue in the world at that time. I was a completely different person. Like, I actually hated science. A bunch of my friends were becoming nurses. And back then I was like, oh, I don't want to go be a nurse. Like, everybody's doing that. That's not what I want to do. And so it was completely different. It's kind of funny when you think about it now. But I was just, my thing at the time is I wanted to travel. I wanted to explore a lot, and then kind of settle down after a year or so and start college. And it just kind of lasted a little longer than I think. And then I ended up down here. And then I kind of got into nursing later on in life. I started college back when I was 28. So I got into it a little bit later. It took me a little longer to really figure out what I wanted to do. But once I did, that path just seemed absolutely perfect for me. And then here I am now in a totally different ballgame than I would have ever dreamed I would have been in.
It's kind of weird, or not weird, but very unique that you've got two cities in America that are known for the medical industry.
Yes.
Cleveland and the Cleveland Clinic, and you've got Houston, which is a mecca, a worldwide mecca, just like Cleveland is. For the medical industry, you got people from all over the world that go to those two cities for treatment. You got people from all over the United States that go to cities for treatment. And here you are now living in the two cities. You spent half your life in Cleveland, and now the other half of your life in Houston, and now you're a nurse. Is that just coincidence, or?
The whole thing is I'm just going to say, this whole past couple of years experience, I think everything's just God sent. Like, he kind of puts you where you're supposed to be and opens up all these wonderful doors for you. Because I think about that all the time. If I wouldn't have moved down here and had been basically in the Houston area, got a job at Methodist, like, if I wouldn't have been there at that moment, would there have been somebody else that would have stepped up and been able and done the same thing that I was able to accomplish so far? So I just feel like he puts you where you're supposed to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. You just, you got to follow your intuition and, live life in a positive way. And, what happens will happen. And the way your story unfolds is what you put into it, so I definitely am a big believer in that. Just go with the flow. And when you get knocked down, get up and keep going. Right.
Yep. You got to get that knocked down a couple of times to make it worthwhile and to really understand what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely. Yes. Getting knocked down will definitely change a person, but it's all in how you make those changes that will ultimately define you in the long run.
Yes, absolutely.
So you are a registered nurse by trade. You are a nurse. I think a lot of people do understand the sacrifice, but perhaps many don't. it's hard being a nurse. I mean, literally, you're the lifeline to your patients. You are the counselor. You are the person and the symbol of strength and hope when people are at their worst. You know, they're having surgeries, they're recovering from this, they've got cancer, they're sick, and you get to treat them. And that hasn't been an easy walk since 2020, and even before 2020. Obviously, you know, being a nurse is a very hard job to do. Describe that sacrifice and all the work that goes in behind the scenes that maybe a lot of our listeners won't know.
That's true. Do you want pre-2020 or after 2020?
Give me pre-2020. What's the sacrifice and what's it like to be a nurse?
It's actually, it's kind of on both sides of the spectrum. It's the most rewarding yet challenging and just mentally and physically draining thing you could possibly do. Just getting through nursing school, like my husband's former Army, and I compare nursing school literally to like boot camp in the military, right? It is the hardest thing, the most emotionally, just everything, and just trying to get through it. It's like they push you so hard just to see if you can hang, basically. And the majority of people, unfortunately, end up failing out just because of how overwhelmingly difficult it is. But then getting through that is just the first obstacle. And then it's really hard. A lot of places don't want to hire new nurses, or some that do, they just don't treat you properly, because going from college into the real world is a totally different ballgame. Like, it's not like you learned it in the textbooks. It's a lot different. So if you get into the field and you don't have the right preceptors and the right mentors, I know a lot of brand new nurses that were literally ready to give up the career and were just crying because it was just too much. Because you get out there and it's a different world out there. And then everybody's life is in your hand. I mean, hospitals, even before 2020, hospitals are always short-staffed. They give you more patients sometimes that you can handle, more difficult patients, and you're trying your hardest, but there's only so much you can do in a time frame. So that's just like a challenge right there. But I will say Houston Methodist was a very good place to come into as a brand new nurse. They gave you with a preceptor for 3 months. You feel really comfortable getting out there and getting your feet wet. But then the challenging thing is you have very long shifts, which I know we get 4 days off if you do your 312. So it goes back and forth. But you have a lot of physicians that unfortunately don't always put patient care as top priority. So you're constantly having to battle physicians and the business you work for that's trying to get money, and you're wanting the best care for your patient, and you're trying to be that patient advocate. But a lot of people and a lot of things can tend to get in your way. So a lot of nurses are kind of more where they don't like, to push buttons, and they don't like to kind of put themselves out there, but you really need to be, because sometimes patients just don't get the proper care and you have to fight for them. You have to make sure they're getting it, while at the same time, sometimes your family members can be a little abrasive. Sometimes your patients, some will be confused. Some will be going through their own things. So sometimes it's a lot to deal with to make sure everything's handled properly. But in the same respect, I mean, people are coming to you in their most vulnerable times of need. Mm-hmm. Mentally, physically, it could be end of life. It could be the most scariest situation. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they look to you for every aspect because you're the one that's there with them 24 hours a day. I mean, a doctor could run in, say a bunch of big words, and then they leave and the patient's looking at you like, I have no idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting there re-educating them, explaining to them, you're holding their hand when they're scared. I mean, I can't tell you how many patients have cried just over different things, and you just sit in there and you just give them a big hug and try to explain to them, like, everything's going to be okay. This is what, is going to happen, and this is what you're going to go through. And let me tell you, those families and those patients, they remember the nurses more than they remember anything else. Because of course they like their doctor. Of course they'll remember the establishment they were at. But it's that nurse that took all the time to take care of them that's going to mean the world to them. Mm-hmm. And no matter what I've been through in different situations, It's very rewarding to know that you were there and you helped somebody when maybe other people couldn't, or they didn't know where else to go. And it's amazing. It's amazing to go home and just realize how many people's lives you touched and what a difference you can make when they needed that. And as a nurse, one of the biggest things I always remind myself is to put yourself in their shoes and put yourself kind of last. Like, no matter what you're going through, no matter what's happening in your life, you have to come to work and realize they need you. What they're going through is more important at that time. So you have to put your own feelings aside and just step up and do what needs to be done the right way.
Indeed. Yeah. I can totally understand the emotional piece of families coming in when their loved ones, again, are in their most vulnerable time in need. And again, they're looking to you as their lifeline. The loved ones are coming in and they're looking to you as that symbol of hope and strength. And she's going to save loved one, or at least be there again as that comforter and stuff like that. And, there's also a lot of people that don't have family. Yeah. And so you are there to be the family, if you will, of these sick and injured people coming into your establishment. Now, to me, that going through nursing school is almost like going through some sort of a boot camp. Now, do they do that on purpose to kind of prepare you for the stressors of this job down the road once you enter into the real world and you are put into hospitals and you're put into stressful trauma type situations?
Absolutely. I'm every nursing school, everybody I've ever talked to, it's the same thing. It's like they try to overwhelm you with so much to do. You could have one night where you had 50 pages of reading, you're studying for a test, doing a care plan. You might not be going to bed till 3 a.m, but you got to get back up and go to clinicals. And it's insane. You go through the most emotional roller coaster. But I definitely think they do it on purpose because they want strong people that can handle very tough, multitasking, critical thinking situations, right? So it's kind of like, it's good and bad, because it's good because, if you made it through, that you're tough and you're going to be able to hang with most situations. But at the same time, you see in the nursing school, usually about half the nursing students end up dropping out or failing. So sometimes maybe those people just needed a little bit more help, and then they got to go back, do it all over again. So I think sometimes they're a little bit too hard. And if they could just kind of embrace the students more and actually help them a little bit more, then you'd have many more people coming out of nursing school, and you might not have quite a big a shortage all the time.
Yeah, you are definitely overworked, to say the least. And again, put in situations where, you're, taking care of critical needs of people that, again, are going through a very bad day or a bad experience, and their vulnerabilities are completely exposed there. Now, with that being said, people always say, the military is exposed to so much, post-traumatic stress and, the stressors of being a police officer and a fireman and, an EMT and all that. And a lot of times people fail to really say that nurses go through a lot of the same traumatic type situations, and you see it every single day. Now, can you explain how it is to kind of take all that in and kind of unpack all of that bad stuff that you see and how do you make it through the days?
It just depends on the day, to be honest, because I've had a lot of different experiences. I'll be honest, I've gone home and cried my eyes out to sleep when it was, say, a patient you were really close to, and maybe they ended up coding on you and and the team couldn't save them. I've gone home and just been completely distraught over situations like that. I've had experiences where I have busted my butt all day caring for maybe an elderly woman, and their family comes in, and sometimes families don't always understand the whole situation. I've had a daughter of a patient almost try to physically attack me one time for no reason, because she thought I was doing something that I wasn't. Just so many things. But you've always got to try to think about the other perspective, no matter how upset or how mad you get. and you just try your best at every situation. And no matter what you go through, even if you're crying, you're upset, you're mad over something that's out of your control, you try to understand it. You try to see the best through it, work through the light with it, and then just kind of wipe yourself off and, pick yourself up and go back and do it again the next day. Because there's a lot of people out there, unfortunately, in the medical field that don't always do it for the right reasons. And I like to be there, and I like to help people and give them what they actually really need and are looking for. And, keep them nice and calm when they're stressed, and just give them that type of comfort that you don't always get. So I can't think of the right word to put it, but you just got to put yourself to the side and just go back in there every day, no matter what you go through, and just do your best as soon as you walk back in that door. Oh, I can't hear you.
I've had some traumatic type situations as well, when, I was in the hospital, and there's nothing like a good, sincere, and genuine nurse that is there to be a voice of reason and to be that voice of comfort and to be that voice of assurance. And I know that's how you nurse, and not everybody nurses that way. Your tough nurses, you got your sincere and genuine nurses, and you got everything in the middle, from this vehicle to this vehicle. Again, everybody has their own, techniques of doing the job. And again, it's, going through these traumatic type situations. I can only imagine the amount of relationships you can build with the sick people that are coming in to see you, because a lot of the times these are repeat customers, if you will. And, and as you see them grow and evolve and either get sicker or better, I can imagine, that relationship forging there, because, from a human to another, and then living in the same community and seeing them out, the grocery stores, and say, hey, you've come a long way. Or again, maybe that death side that, that is there. So that's, I can only imagine that's got to be a tough job, really.
It is. It's tough, and it's very rewarding, but a lot of your patients, you become almost like families with. Mm-hmm. I've had some that have kept in touch with me over the years. And if they have questions outside, I'm like, here's my cell phone number, like, call me. If you can't get a hold of the doctor, I'll try to help you through it. And we'll talk about all this later, but even when I was doing like the protests outside of Methodist, right? And like encouraging the public to come in, you wouldn't believe how many, like hundreds of people were there that would come up to me, and they were like, oh, I showed up because you were my nurse, or you took care of my dad or my wife. And I just, I remembered you, and I just remembered what a good nurse you were and how caring you were. And I couldn't believe what you were going through. So I wanted to be here to support you. Mm-hmm. So many people out there in the public were past patients, or their loved ones were, and they just remembered, and they wanted to come out and show their support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We go to 2020, March. COVID hits our country, gets completely shut down and completely locked down. And before you know it, you're probably in a whirlwind of nightmares trying to pick up the pieces as a nurse, trying to figure out what's going on here. All of a sudden, this thing hits. We're completely, PPE'd out, and, between the gloves and the face masks and the surgical masks and the lockdowns in hospitals and not allowing loved ones coming into their sick. What was going on through the minds of folks like you that were the frontline nurses, if you will, and the frontline doctors? What was life like as we went deeper into 2020, from the start into, say, like the Mays and Junes and Julys, and as we got deeper into 2020, when they started to say, you got to take this vaccine?
Oh gosh, the beginning was a cluster mess. Like, they had no idea what they were doing. We had no idea what we were doing. Like, literally, when COVID first kind of came on board and you were getting your first patients, I'm not even kidding. Like, this will make you laugh. Like, nurses would come into work wearing masks, and the hospital literally told us, take the masks off, don't wear the mask, because we don't want you scaring the patients. So very first part of COVID, it was do like everything not to scare them, not to alarm them. We didn't wear any PPE, no masks. Then shortly after that, it just kept changing every other day. I mean, you go in one day, it was wear a mask. Okay, wear an N95. Okay, now we're, the whole gown, the whole like setup and this and that. But now we're running out of supplies. So like anybody who's ever worn an N95 knows it's pretty much good for like one day, one patient, and you're done, right? Well, then with the shortage, it was all of a sudden like, okay, now you can use it up to 3 days. Okay, now you can use it up to 10 days. Turn it in at the end of your shift in this little bag, and we're going to do this like ultraviolet thing and whatever, and then bring it back to you. But before you wear it, make sure to open it up and air it out, because there's these weird fumes in there from whatever they did to like decontaminate it. And so we're all literally like, you're just walking around all the time, not knowing what's going on, if what you're even doing is safe. And I'm not going to lie, like at first I was scared too. We were all scared because nobody knew what was going on. I mean, I did it a couple times where I came home, stripped down in my garage, threw everything in hot water in the laundry room, ran naked to the shower, like thinking I've got the plague or something. But I only did that like a couple of times. And then I started kind of like thinking and realizing, microbiology a little bit better. But the first couple months were crazy. And then everybody assumed at first, right, that the hospitals were just overwhelmed and all this sort of thing. And it was just the opposite for us here, because they didn't want people coming into the hospital unless they absolutely needed to. And they shut down all the elective procedures. So basically we had like half the patients the first couple months of COVID than we usually would have. So they were literally sending nurses home, and we were getting put on call and being sent home because we didn't even barely have any patients. And then all of a sudden after that, it said, okay, never mind. We're going to open up and just flood y'all with like everybody. Then you'd get, transferred over to the COVID unit, where you could only have like a couple patients at a time because it took so long to put all this PPE on and off. And at first they wouldn't let anybody but nurses go in the room. So you had to do everything, from dietary to physical therapy to anything that patient needed. So you were constantly, trying to multitask and get all your work done. The doctors were interesting at that time because only a couple of doctors would actually gown up and go in those rooms to see the patients. Most of them, they had iPads that they offered in the hospital. Most of these doctors would literally come to the nurse, give you the iPad. You would go into that patient's room, so that way the doctor could like video chat with them from the hallway. So, and you're just thinking like, how can you assess a patient and take care of them if you're not even willing to like go listen to their lungs or go see how they're doing? So the majority of doctors stood in the hallway and were too scared to even go in the room. So it was up to us to get that communication going. And then hopefully you were a good nurse and did your proper assessment, because the doctors would be like relying on you because they wouldn't even step foot into the room to see the patient 9 times out of 10. So it was the most interesting, just challenging. And then these patients, the amount of anxiety that was provoked on them, they were so scared because they were being treated like they had the plague. Your family wasn't allowed in. The doctor wouldn't even come in and see the room. Like no other staff would come in. You would have this one nurse, and half the nurses were so scared, they would literally come in, like throw the meds at them and run out the door and be done. Mm-hmm. And like, they wouldn't even it was like just the simple things from taking a shower to having a meal and stuff. It was like, none of this was in actual good regards. It was just hurry up and get out of the room. So I kind of started realizing this, and I'm just like, wait, this is wrong. Like, this is not how you're supposed to take care of people. So I would put on all my PPE and stand in there, and I'd be in there for an hour or two, like just hanging out, talking to them, BSing. Hey, let's go take a shower. Oh, hey, you need this. Let me go get this for you. And you would see that anxiety, like stress level just go down, and they would start feeling so much better. And they would be there and they'd be like, well, how come the other nurses won't do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, so many of them are just so like, they just get so scared on their own, well-being and what's going on that I think a lot of people just forgot that you're actually like, you signed up for this. Like, this is your duty. You're supposed to care for people, whether they have something contagious or whatever it might happen to be. So you saw a lot of things in the hospital like that you had never seen pre-COVID. And just the rules went out the window. I mean, the actual taking care of patient care completely went out the window. I mean, I saw things where people on like breathing masks and BiPAPs and stuff, like they would literally tell you, don't even let him eat. Like, don't even feed him, because nobody wanted to stay in the room long enough to like help them with it. I mean, it was just, it was very overwhelmingly kind of traumatic to see like humanity being treated this way. And then realizing that, it didn't need to be that way, basically.
And this is in Houston, the mecca of medical care. And Houston Methodist is known as, being one of the best in the nation. And if this is going on in our civilian hospitals, could you, imagine what's going on in the VA and what's going on in nursing homes and other hospitals across the country. Now, I understand that your protocols were changing by the minute, by the hour, by the day, and you didn't know if you were coming or going. And the funny thing about this, see, I was never a mask guy. I figured, hey, I don't want to wear a mask because I think that wearing a mask is probably going to do me more harm than good. And I'll explain. By me wearing a mask, it's almost as if I'm putting a petri dish on my face.
Exactly.
And when everybody was wearing a mask, I could see the filth on their mask. I could see sweat. You could see the black and the brown from the dirt and just the everyday grunge of wearing a mask. And people would be wearing the same mask over and over and over again. And I can only imagine like how you are literally putting all these germs and all this stuff on your face. And now from what I know, just as a regular old guy, is that when you wear a mask, that was typically for, say, the surgeon that was performing a surgery on a patient to protect the patient from the actual surgeon's germs while operating on an open wound with gloves and gowns and everything else on. And once that doctor left that room, that surgery was over, that mask would go in the trash can and it was done. Now, it doesn't make any sense to me how the government all of a sudden have all these mandates in place that you will wear a mask and you could wear whatever you wanted. I could take this napkin and duct tape it on my head and that would be suitable for a mask. Now, again, things weren't adding up. The dots weren't really connecting in my head. And I'm glad to this day that I decided not to wear a mask. Of course, when I went to the VA or whatever like that, and I had to, well, then I put the mask on. I played that game. But I did put on a clean mask. I wasn't reusing dirty mask after dirty mask after dirty mask. Now, we all know that the nurses do the dirty work. Okay. And when you had stated that the doctors wouldn't come into the room to see their patients and that you would have to bring an iPad in there so they could talk to the patient when he's sitting outside of the room in his own office, 100 feet away, that right there is horrible leadership. I'm sorry, you don't lead like that. And to literally put all the risk on the laborers, if you will, of the hospital, to me is downright frightening. If the doctors were not taking any part in this, well, then you shouldn't have been either. And if anybody should have been in that room, it would be the doctor, because that is the guy or the girl that you're looking to the most for what's going on. How can you fix me? How can you get me back on my feet and back out into the real world so I can move on from this illness? But it went further than that, because not all your patients had COVID, but you were treating everybody as if they had COVID. Now, did you ever rethink your job as a nurse at this time with all this chaos that was going on around you?
Oh, yeah. I never wanted to stop being a nurse, but it just blew my mind how everybody was handling the situation. Just the doctor's lack of giving a crap about the patients, right? And then even all the administrative CEOs, all the big guys like running the hospital, they wouldn't even be in the building either. They would literally stay home for like a couple months. But then they would send some poor little secretary around with these iPads where they would all get on there from their house and tell us what a great job we're doing, you know, all this stuff while they were hiding at home, like giving all the orders and the rules. But like, I just started questioning like people's common sense and critical thinking skills right off the bat, because these nurses, like I would see a nurse, say a COVID patient went home, right? They accidentally left a bag of clothes there. This nurse literally went in there, wouldn't even touch it. She's like, what do I do with it? It's got COVID on it. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, it's his bag of clothes. Just take it, call him, and someone can come pick it up. She literally wouldn't even touch the bag. It was literally like the thing had like fire ants crawling on it. And all these things, like none of this just made sense. It was like, come on, people, like you understand how germs work. Like it's what never made sense to me is it's supposed to be a respiratory virus, right? So you get it by coughing, sneezing, running fever, but now all of a sudden it's like people are Cloroxing their groceries. They're like, they won't touch anything. They're wearing gloves like that, like crazy, like driving their cars. And even in the hospital, this was the funniest thing to me. So usually only surgical nurses wear the surgical caps, you know, and all that. All these nurses started wearing surgical caps all the time. It was like the cool thing to do. And they're like, do you want one? I'm like, no, I don't want a surgical cap. I'm not a surgical nurse. And I'm like, why are people wearing these? And I'm not even lying. These nurses were like, because the COVID gets in your hair. Like as you're walking around, the COVID will get in your hair and it will stick to you. And then you will bring it home. So they would wrap all their hair up and put it in surgical caps. And I'm literally looking at them like, how did you make it through nursing school? Like, you really think that's what's happening? But I'm more of a strong-willed kind of outspoken person. So like, I never wanted to get out of the nursing field. It just made me very sick to see all these other people looking at it from a different way and just treating patients just with total disregard because they're just worried about themselves. And then the thing that would kill me too is I'd see all these nurses and coworkers post stuff on Facebook and all this. Oh, poor me. You know, I had to work 12 hours with COVID patients, wear my N95 and blah, blah, blah. And just, oh, poor me and what I'm going through. And I'm just kind of like, well, what about that patient, you know, that had to sit there for days, not see their family and get treated like this? Like, but you're just kind of worried about yourself and like posting something on social media so people feel sorry for you. Like, that's kind of not what we're here for, you know?
You know, the practices and the protocols that were in place here, I mean, they weren't made to look out for the best interest of the patients that needed that help the most. It was as if the deck was completely stacked against anybody and everybody that was coming into our nation's hospitals.
Yes.
Now, the anxiety piece that was there by the actual nurses and the doctors and the clinicians and the patients themselves, I think had a lot to do with the government overreach of the fear that was out there. Now, folks, we all know COVID is real.
Yeah.
And I know people that have died from COVID, and we are not here to talk about like it's not real. No, it is real, folks. It is real. But I am joined by a guest who thinks that a lot of the protocols that were in place weren't the right types of protocols. And after seeing that they weren't working, they continued on with it. And not only did they continue on with it, but it got far greater toward the side of overreach completely, to where you have a loved one in a hospital that is going through their final days and they cannot have their loved ones in there in that room to hold their hand as they are slipping away. Their last and final moments were the nurses like Jennifer that were in there holding the hands of, again, the most vulnerable people in our country. And it just makes it, I'm just dumbfounded by what was going on. And even further, they had proved that masks weren't even working. And you could bring in, and you should have been able to bring in at least one or two guests while these loved ones were battling terminal illnesses and sicknesses and surgeries. And I mean, all that stuff. Like I said, you didn't have to have COVID, but they treated everybody as if you did have COVID. Because I think they didn't know the severity of what the infection was. And again, I think there was a lot of propaganda that was done overseas that our country fed into. And then by that propaganda being fed to our people here, completely spoon fed, our government bit and they went with it and they shut everything down. And again, it's just crazy to even think back about how bad and how crazy things got. I mean, you're talking a city of Houston, the fourth largest city in America, not having traffic. Nobody was on the road. I remember that. I moved here in 2020.
Yeah, that was the only good thing. That was one of the good things about it, though. You could actually go somewhere and not take like an hour to get there.
But again, you're going somewhere. But even the state of Texas had some pretty mandatory lockdowns that a lot of people were, surprised that Governor Abbott even took the steps that he actually did. Again, in a state where freedom is, very, very well respected, right? Being in Texas, it's very pro-America and pro-freedom and pro-liberty. And, even a conservative governor went to the point to completely shut down this state. And even in Montgomery County, the most conservative county in Texas, and one of the most conservative in the United States, even took measures to put caution tape up around basketball hoops and to remove the rims on basketball hoops so people couldn't go out and shoot hoops outside, and take the tennis court nets down so people couldn't play tennis. It's just, when you look at how crazy it was, really, at the end of the day, it's like, how did we get here? How did we get here? So I want to talk now more about what happened to you when you have the doctors that are coming in and they're saying, all right, you need to take the COVID shot if you want to remain a employee here at Houston Methodist. How did that conversation go?
That was a really interesting conversation, but I have to add in before I forget, for what you were just talking about. It's funny. I've actually had COVID once in my whole life, and all I do is work with COVID patients, right? But it was when I was working in the COVID unit at Methodist, wearing my mask. And that's when I caught COVID, because it obviously didn't work. And then after I left Methodist, I have never worn a mask again. And let me just tell you, I have treated thousands of patients outpatient for COVID, coughing in my face, breathing treatments, the whole 9 yards. And natural immunity is amazing, because I've never gotten sick again. No COVID, no flu, no nothing. And I just breathe. I used to laugh and tell people I just breathe and I'm like dripping COVID, basically. So, I mean, I'm like walking proof that not only natural immunity is better, but the mask does absolutely nothing at all. But when it came to those mandates, so remember, Methodist was literally the first ones in the whole country to get the Pfizer shot, which, if I remember right, they got it in December of 2020. And then they offered it to basically, first it was just whatever employee wanted it. And then they started offering it to their not just every patient, but their very VIP patients that were very wealthy. And then it just kind of trickled on down from there. But the employees that actually got it on their own accord was maybe like 30 to 35% of all the employees at Methodist total. And there's like 30,000 or more employees now. There's like 8 hospitals. It's huge. So then this was like January, February of last year. And then all of a sudden, everybody's kind of whispering, talking that these mandates are going to come into play, but nobody thought it would happen anytime soon. So then they offered you the hope bonus. So it was like, oh, here, come take the shot and you get $500. And some people jumped on board and did it. And when you asked them why, they were like, well, I don't want it, but if I'm going to be forced into taking it, I'd at least like to get some money out of it. But I'm kind of like, isn't your life more valuable than $500? Like, I don't understand that. So then, long story short, like me and a bunch of friends were just kind of talking about it. Everybody's getting anxiety, they're getting stressed. So I kind of did this thing to where I went in on my day off with my scrubs on. I made this little like petition at home, and I ran around my whole hospital, like every unit, every floor, to see who agreed with us that you shouldn't be forced against your will to take the shot or lose your job. And I had hundreds of signatures just by myself. Like people were signing it left and right, even the people who took it, because they didn't feel like we should be forced into it against our will. But people were terrified. They wouldn't sign it until they hid me in like closets. They would hide me in stairwells, and then send people in to sign it because they were terrified of Methodists. So then basically somebody snitched on me that day and called the big shots to let them know what I was doing. Well, it turns out the CEO and CNO was actually walking around the building that day trying to find me to stop me, but I was too fast. Every time they'd make it to where I was already gone, so they couldn't catch me. Well, then the next day I get a call from the CEO's secretary saying he wants to have a meeting with you. And I'm like, all right, and I'm kind of stressed at this point. My heart's beating. So I bring another nurse with me the following day because I didn't know you could legally record it at the time. So I brought a nurse as a witness. They bring me into this big executive conference room where it's the CEO, David Bernard, the CNO, Becky Chalupa, the head of HR, and they all kind of surround me at this table and put my friend at the other end. And we're nice at first, and then we go back and forth for over an hour and a half. It gets heated. We're arguing. I'm like, why? And this was before they issued the mandate, but I was trying to be proactive and take my steps appropriately to try to reason with them. I'm like, well, why can't just let us wear the PPE like we've been doing the past year or so? Like, why is it different now? Why do we have to take this? They wouldn't answer my questions. They just kept ignoring me. The CEO even got really cocky and looked at me, and he goes, well, 100% vaccination is more important than your individual autonomy. If you don't like it, there's the door. He goes, don't you think all these nursing students would love to fill your spot? Like, it was, their whole eye care values was gone. Like, I asked him, I'm like, why don't, where's your eye care values? Why don't the employees matter? Like, I'm literally speaking to you on behalf of thousands of employees right now that you obviously don't care about. And then they were just threatening me, trying to say, oh, we could fire you now for this. And I'm just kind of laughing like, okay, well, I plan on getting fired anyway, so there's nothing else you can do to me. And then I asked him, I was like, well, what do you think the public would feel and all the other hospitals feel if I brought this to their attention? And then he kind of looked at me and he's like, well, I suggest you not do that. And I was like, why? What are you going to do? So then at the end of this whole meeting, they're like, well, can we tell Mark Boom, the main CEO of all the Methodists, that this matter's resolved, and that we'll move forward? Because I'd been trying to get a hold of him to talk to him, to try to reason with him. And I said, absolutely not. I said, you need to tell him I need to have a meeting with him so he can understand what everybody's actually thinking and feeling. But to my surprise, of course, I got no meeting. I go home that day. The next day at work, that morning, we get our official email, and it was in the middle of April, stating that June 7th is the deadline from Mark Boom. Get your shot or your 2 weeks unpaid leave, and then you're fired on the 22nd. So I took this as a direct correlation for me, because I just had this meeting the day before, just asked to speak to him. The very next morning, they issued this out to everybody. So I'm walking down the hallways, literally so mad, so upset. How could they do this to us? Nurses are crying, people are shaking, everybody's upset. Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? You had more than half the staff not wanting to take this. So then I kind of go home after that. And then I'm off the next day. I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? So I started Googling all the local media. I started an online petition. And the next thing you knew, it just blew up viciously. Like, everybody wanted a piece of it. I was hoping all the public attention in the online petition would help, but it did no good. I mean, we reached out so big, like, I'm on Hannity, Fox News, CNN's got me live, which was funny. That was hilarious. I've got the BBC in my backyard. I have reporters flying from all over the country to come interview about this. We were even in like, it was like a newspaper in the Netherlands, Germany. I mean, all over the world. It was insane. So I'm thinking like, okay, Methodists might back down because they're getting all this bad publicity, but they didn't care. They couldn't have cared less. So that's when I realized, you know, we need a lawyer. We need to actually fight this hard. And then that's where that came into play. And employees just were finding me left and right. Everybody wanted on this lawsuit. They would even, before I got fired, they would even call my unit or email me at work to try to find out information. It was literally crazy how they were trying to reach me and not even caring that Methodist is going to see this email or intercept this phone call, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, the crazy thing to me is when my red flag went up is when I started seeing all these TV commercials. Every commercial was a professional athlete, a movie star. It was the mayor, a city council person, people of influence. We're going to give you free tickets. We're going to give you cash. We're going to give you food. We're going to give you a vacation. Go take the shot. Come on, we're going to give you, come on down. We're going to give you anything that you want, pretty much. And this was going on throughout the country. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why are these people on TV of massive influence begging the American people in dangling a prize, if you will, for putting something in their bodies that hasn't even really been tested? I mean, come on, this has been around for 30, 60, 90 days at the time of all this that was going on. And people were on TV getting their vaccination live as if it was like, whoa, like this is like some, you know, thing that we all have to do. And I mean, and who knows if they were even real? It could have been saline shots or whatever it may be. But the crazy thing is that once all that overreach and once all that begging and pleading and to the American people to get this shot that no one really knew about, that's when I was like, oh no, there's something here that isn't adding up. Again, something wasn't passing the smell test to me. And I think today, in my personal opinion, we have RSV cases that are actually through the roof. And I believe that sickness is here because of all the people that wore masks.
Yes.
For 2 years or for a year and a half or whatever it may be. And their immunity to any sickness is nothing. And the people that seem to be the healthiest are the people that didn't wear the mask, that didn't buy into the fear, and all the hypocrisy that was put out there to the American people. And really worldwide, you got governors of states saying, you will not leave your home. You are locked down while they go to their winery and have little festivals with cheese and, you know, their wine, and they're out dining with no masks on. It was kind of like, do as I say and not as I do in the United States of America, where liberty and freedom is everything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I find, and anybody who's around me, like, always laughs when I say this, but when people are worried about masks and worried about germs, I'm like, oh no, like, here I come. I'll go lick the table. I'll go lick the germ, like whatever. Like, your natural immune system, you're supposed to get germs. You're supposed to get viruses, and that's how you build antibodies. That's how your body like recognizes things and you can combat it later on. After the worst thing you could have possibly done was tell everybody, stay home, don't go outside, which never made any sense. Wear a mask, stay away from all people, and sanitize everything. Mm-hmm. You are literally shutting down your own natural defense mechanism. You have no immunity. So as soon as it's like, okay, everybody take the mask out and go out there, and you're breathing in things that you haven't been exposed to for like a year and a half, now everybody's getting sick.
Right.
And then unfortunately, all these people that have taken the shot now, a lot of them regret it, but now their immune system is jeopardized and they're getting sick like all the time. And they're constantly getting sick. You see so many vaccinated people getting COVID all the time and other illnesses.
Absolutely.
And I'm literally like walking proof, because I mean, I'll go play in the mud. I'm not going to go wear a mask. You know what I mean? Like I welcome germs because they keep you healthy. Like it's not a bad thing. Just kindergarten basics. Wash your hands, you know what I mean, before you eat. You take showers, you bathe. If you have to cough, just cough in your elbow. Not a big deal. We've been doing it for years, right? And I love it because people like me and you were like walking proof. Like we don't wear masks, we don't get shots, we don't do all this other stuff, and we're healthy than everybody else all the time. Like even where I'm working at now, like everybody there is getting sick, constantly calling out. They've got something or another. And I'm the only one that's been sitting there the whole time and with nothing, like not even missing a beat. Not one day did I get sick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And folks, I want to make it known, I am not an anti-vaxxer at all. 100%. I am completely vaccinated on everything that I need to be vaccinated for. However, I have not gotten the COVID shot because I believe it's my right to say, no, I don't want to put that in my body because I have reason to believe that that's not going to do my body what you say it's going to do for my body. And a lot of people that I know that have gotten the shot, they regret it. They continuously have COVID. They're continuously getting boosters. And I'm like, you're putting in my eyes, it's poison. And again, there's not enough clinical research out there to say, hey, this is safe. And, it took so much bravery for you and courage to stand up in the face of, your hospital leadership, who you knew wasn't working in the best interest of their employees and their patients. And there's an oath that you take, when when you're a nurse and a doctor. And again, it seems as if that oath had been crumpled up and tossed in the trash can.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm like you, from the beginning, there was, even without a medical background, so many red flags. If you have to coerce somebody, pay them, force them into doing something, that's kind of like the definition of rape, right? Like, I mean, if it's so good, everybody would be just running out to do it, and you wouldn't have to force them or pay them or bribe them to do it. I mean, you were talking about the things on TV. The craziest one I saw something in an advertisement saying, if you're in Vegas, come down to the strip club. We'll give you a free lap dance if you show your vaccination card.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, like,
Crazy.
What? Like, this makes no sense. And then the sick thing is even before I left, till this very day, I mean, we saw people straight after getting the shot with severe adverse reactions, with horrible things going on that were not explained by anything else, right? And they just refuse to look at that. They don't want to talk about it. Just like, just don't even worry about that. That didn't happen. It's experimental. It's still experimental. It's not FDA approved. But yet, why are you not trying to collect data? All these good physicians, nurses, people out there are like, look, I have the data. I can tell you what it's doing. This is what's going on. Why would you not look at that? Why would you not want to see both sides of the picture? Because ever since they first came out and were like, it's 100% safe and effective, nothing in the medical field, ever since the medical field was created, is that possible. Mm-hmm. We are human beings. We're not God. We can't create something 100% safe and effective. Even Tylenol will kill you. Every procedure, everything in the book, you have to sign like a consent for before doing it. And there's always a risk. But with this, all of a sudden, it just magically came out. And there's no risk. There's no nothing. Don't worry. And I love Methodists because they would force you to sit in their chair and take the shot or you lose your job, right? Mm-hmm. But before taking it, here, sign this little waiver. So if something does happen to you, we're not held responsible for it. And you're literally like, wait, you just said it's 100% safe and effective. So why do you have a waiver? Like, take away and I always kept telling them, take away your waiver, put your money where your mouth is, and actually prove that you really think it's safe and effective. And then you don't need a waiver, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like you too. I was never anti-vax. I took all my shots of every sort of the kind before this. But after this whole ordeal, it's got me so skeptical and nervous now. Like, I'm afraid to inject anything into my body because God knows if they're trying to hide it in something else and not even tell you. I mean,
we are living in unprecedented times. And again, sometimes I don't even know up from down anymore. What's true? What's false? Again, when we are fed so much disinformation that is out there, misinformation that is out there, again, it's like you have to do your own research. But where do you go for research? Because a lot of the places you go for research is propaganda. So you really need to use your head, critical think, put pen to paper and really say, okay, what's going on here? What's the cause? What's the effect? What's the long-term, what's the long-term here? And again, it's really something that we don't know still. It's day to day, as it changes. But I also wanted to know, I just wanted to touch on this as we're running short on time here, but what this has done to our country has really created a mental health crisis. With the anxiety that's attached to this, and the depression that is attached to this, and the fear of communicating and leaving the home and being an effective citizen and contributor to our society has really, again, it's put people in the shadows of darkness. They don't want to leave. They don't want to work anymore. They were paid to stay home, and they've kind of created this own little socialism type environment in their own home. And again, they're not contributing in ways that they once did. Now, this has also taken a strong toll on our children. Our nation's children were at home for 2 years. I remember going and taking my kids out to a football field in California before we moved here in June of 2020, out at a park that had 8 massive soccer fields that were all synthetic turf. And there was nobody out there. I took my kids out there to throw a football and to throw a softball to my daughter to get them out of the house because school was completely shut down. Well, we have a Riverside County Sheriff pull up and say, under the direction of Governor Gavin Newsom, you need to vacate these premises immediately or risk being arrested. Now, my children saw that.
Yeah.
And we're out here. Nobody's out there. The pull-up bars are caution taped, and there's cones everywhere. Stay inside, stay inside, stay inside. It just, again, where are we living? Where are we living? And how did we all just lay down to this? In ways that, again, it is frightening what the government has proven that they can do to a massive populace.
Oh, yeah. It's extremely scary. I mean, we are supposed to be in the land of the free, right? And we're supposed to be allowed to make our own decisions, but they magically got rid of the Constitution. They got rid of the Nuremberg Code. They even got rid of HIPAA. They got rid of so many things that are put into play to protect us. But they did this very well. They were very strategic. They had planned this for a while. They knew what they were doing because it's like they did it so perfectly to get everybody to fall in line. And I've had a lot of people from other countries that moved here contact me, and they're like, I came here to escape this sort of thing. Like, how is this happening here? Like, how are people allowing this to happen? It just blows their minds, right? Because they came here for a better life and for freedom. And I simply tell them, I'm like, well, you got to understand, a lot of Americans have never known what it's like to fight for their freedom. They don't understand. They've taken it for granted. They let their ancestors do the work, and they're just reaping the benefits. And in America, I mean, half people, the biggest thing to them is like, oh, do I have my cell phone or not? I mean, a lot of people just take it for granted for what they have. And they don't realize that's how you allow all of this sort of thing to take place and happen. You can't just lay down and accept things. You have to think, you have to fight for it, because once you just lay down and you don't fight any longer for your freedoms, they get taken away. And once they're gone, you don't get them back very easily. You can't let them go. And my poor grandfather and all these other people that were like World War II vets, I mean, they're rolling over in their grave right now. Like, what is wrong with you people? Like, why are you allowing this to happen? And I mean, some people say I'm far-fetched for saying this, but this is so similar to how they did the Holocaust. I mean, it's like almost word for word identical how they did it, even trying to take away our guns, to just everything, just the mass hypnosis of just the fear, basically.
Very scary indeed. Well, you are a great advocate. And, I want to just thank you for joining us today, Jennifer. We sincerely appreciate everything you have done and continue to do in the community to be an effective and positive voice of change. Your bravery, service, sacrifice, and dedication is truly admirable.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate it. And you are one of my heroes too, because ever since the first day I've met you and you've explained to me your whole story and what you've gone through, and just how determined and how hardworking and perseverance, you are amazing. Like I absolutely look up to you too, and I appreciate being on here. And before you let me go, can we maybe solicit my little fundraiser coming up?
Of course.
Thank you.
We need more time. That's the thing.
Oh, we could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours. But do you mind if I throw it out there?
Talk about your fundraiser.
Okay. And maybe at some time you can throw the flyer up there. But basically, to make a long story short, because some people think our case already got dismissed. Mm-hmm. We made it through the federal Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. They dismissed us. I did not personally think our lawyer was doing a good job, so I dismissed him as well. And I got on a new, much better lawyer out of the Austin area. Got him on board. He's actually filing a brand new suit for us in the state courts, which will be done this month. And our whole goal is to go to the Texas Supreme Court to basically stop this, to make Methodists accountable for what they did. And hopefully, just like how it happened in New York, of all places, everybody should be allowed their jobs reinstated with back pay. So to make a long story short, the funding is astronomical because Methodist is this billion-dollar beast, right? And it's like us 207 employees that are trying to fight him. So I'm always doing different fundraisers to try to help us raise some extra money through donations. So, and I think you're going to put up the flyer at some time, but January 21st out at Blackwoods Gun Club in Conroe, we're having a big clay shoot event, which will be fun. I like to do fun activities, bring the public on board. You can go to our website, which is www.guardiansofmedicalchoice.com, and you'll see a big thing there. You can click sign up individual or team. Our prices are affordable. You'll see it offers a lot, and just a good day of fun. Clay shooting, we love our guns down here in Texas, and just a great opportunity to help us kind of back us up and help us raise some extra funds so we can fight Methodists all the way and never back down. Because the word backing down and quit is not in my vocabulary.
Well, we all know that we don't wake up and say, I'm going to become an advocate today.
No.
I'm an advocate, you're an advocate, and there's a reason why we're advocates, because when you see something, you got to say something, right? That's our duty as Americans. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. It is our obligation. It is our duty as Americans to stand up in the face of oppression or whatever it may be, to say, hey, look, this isn't right here, and this is an injustice. And I'm going to fight honorably because that's what type of person I am. And it's not an easy walk. Advocating takes everything out of you. And I know advocating is probably 10 times harder than nursing because of everything that's coming your way. And you have to unpack all this stuff. Again, it is so stressful. It literally will drain you from head to toe. It is exhausting. And it is a walk that nobody wants to do. But it takes a special person that has that dedication and that determination and that will to never quit, to move forward. And once you do that in an honorable fashion, you will have people behind you that will support you every step of the way. And I know I'm one of those people. And I've been out to one of your fundraisers, and they're great. They're a lot of fun. And I plan on being at this next one too. But listen, we are totally short on time. I will definitely make sure that I put that flyer up tonight when everybody sees this interview. And again, I mean, I need to have you back several times. I mean, we really need to chapter out this story because it's very intriguing. And again, it's very brave, what you have done, standing up to made men in this community and across the country. So again, your service, your sacrifice, your bravery, your courage, that says a lot about you and about your character. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. For Tuesdays with Tally, this is Brian.